The champagne bottle shattered against the cabin wall 6 inches from my head. I ducked behind the bathroom door, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Through the crack, I watched my son reload, his face twisted into something I didn't recognize anymore. My son, my only boy. Dad, come on out. We can talk about this. Kyle's voice was steady, almost gentle. That scared me more than the broken glass glittering on the carpet. I know you heard something you shouldn't have. Let me explain. I pressed my back against the cold tile, trying to control my breathing. My hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, though there was plenty of that. It was the weight of what I'd discovered 2 hours ago, standing outside his suite on the deck 9, when I'd gone to return his sunglasses. The old man will have a heart attack before we reach Grand Cayman. The doctor already signed off on his medications, wrong dosage prescribed weeks ago. No one will question a thing when Thomas Brennan, 67, overweight, high blood pressure, drops dead on a Caribbean cruise. That was my son's voice through the door. Matter of fact, like he was discussing quarterly projections for Brennan Construction, the company I'd built from nothing 40 years ago. And you're absolutely sure about the will? That was a woman's voice. Not Rachel, my daughter-in-law. Someone else. Changed it last month. Everything goes to me now. The company, the properties, the accounts, all of it. Once he's gone, we're set. You and me, baby. I'd stood there frozen, my son's sunglasses slipping from my fingers and clattering on the deck floor. Inside the room, the conversation stopped. I'd run. But where do you run on a cruise ship? In the middle of the ocean. Now, trapped in my own cabin with my son on the other side of the bathroom door, I realized I'd made a critical mistake. I should have gone to the captain immediately. Should have told security. Should have done anything except come back to my room alone, thinking I needed time to process what I'd heard. Dad, I'm coming in. Kyle's footsteps moved closer. I did the only thing I could think of. I turned on the shower, cranked it to full blast, and slipped out through the service door that connected to the housekeeping corridor. I'd noticed it earlier when I tipped the steward. Now it might save my life. The service corridors were narrow, fluorescent lit, and empty. I hurried through them, my dress shoes squeaking on the industrial flooring. I needed to think, needed to plan. The ship wouldn't dock for another 3 days. 3 days with a son who wanted me dead. I found myself at the ship's library, a quiet space on deck 7 that I'd discovered on the first day of the cruise. It was past midnight now, empty. I locked the door behind me and sank into one of the leather chairs, my mind racing. Kyle wanted Brennan Construction, my life's work, the company I'd built from a single truck and a toolbox into a $50 million operation. I'd always planned to leave it to him. He just had to wait. Apparently, he was done waiting. My phone buzzed. A text from Kyle. Dad, where are you? I'm worried. You didn't take your heart medication tonight. Let me bring it to you. The heart medication. He'd mentioned medications in that conversation. My doctor, Dr. Peters, had adjusted my prescription 3 weeks ago. Kyle had picked it up from the pharmacy for me. Kyle, who'd been so helpful lately, so attentive. I'd been taking the wrong dosage for 3 weeks. On purpose. A slow build-up to a fatal heart attack that would look natural. My hands clenched on the armrests. My son had been poisoning me. Slowly, carefully. Another text. Dad, please answer. I love you. I'm sorry about earlier. I was drunk, said stupid things. None of it meant anything. So, he was going to gaslight me. Pretend I'd misunderstood. Make me doubt what I'd heard. I pulled out my phone and made a decision. But not to the captain. Not yet. I called my lawyer, Gerald Morrison, back in Seattle. It was past 3 a.m. there, but Gerald had been my friend for 30 years. He answered on the 4th ring, voice groggy. Thomas, what's wrong? Gerald, I need you to listen carefully and don't interrupt. Record this call. I told him everything. The conversation I'd overheard. The medications. The will I'd apparently changed last month, though I had no memory of doing so. Gerald made a choked sound when I got to that part. Thomas, you didn't change your will. I'm looking at your file right now. Last update was 4 years ago when Margaret died. It's split evenly between Kyle and your daughter Emma, with the company going into a trust that Kyle would manage but not own outright. So Kyle had forged a new will. Of course he had. How good is your health coverage on that cruise? Gerald asked. Why? Because you're going to need a lawyer, and I'm booking the next flight to Grand Cayman. We dock there in 3 days, right? I'll meet you at the port. In the meantime, Thomas, you need to stay alive. Can you do that? That's the plan. And Thomas? Don't eat or drink anything Kyle gives you. Nothing. Understand? After I hung up, I sat in the dark library for a long time, thinking. Kyle wasn't working alone. He'd mentioned a woman, someone who wasn't Rachel, which meant Rachel might not know about any of this. My daughter-in-law, who'd always been sweet to me, who'd given me 2 grandchildren. I needed to test that theory. I found Rachel the next morning at breakfast, sitting alone at one of the outdoor tables on the Lido deck. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. Rachel, honey, can we talk? She looked up, surprised. Thomas, Kyle's been looking everywhere for you. He said you disappeared last night and haven't been answering your phone. I needed some air, couldn't sleep. I sat down across from her, studying her face. How long have you and Kyle been having problems? She froze, a piece of toast halfway to her mouth. What makes you think, Rachel, I'm old, not blind. He's been distant with you this whole trip, and last night I heard him on the phone with someone. A woman, her face crumpled. Just like that, she broke. Her name is Veronica. She's his assistant, has been for the last 6 months. I found messages between them 2 weeks ago. She wiped her eyes angrily. He says it's nothing, that I'm paranoid, but this cruise was supposed to be us reconnecting as a family, and he barely looks at me. Veronica, I repeated, the woman from the phone call. Rachel, did Kyle ask you to help with anything unusual lately? Any paperwork? Documents? She shook her head. No. Why? And my medications. Did you have any part in picking those up? Your medications? No. Kyle handled all that. He said you'd asked him to. Thomas, what's going on? I made a decision. Rachel was innocent, and she might be the only ally I had on this ship. Kyle is trying to kill me. She went pale. What? I told her everything. When I finished, she was shaking. Oh my God. Oh my God, Thomas. The kids. He has the kids with him right now. Max and Sophie. They're down in the kids' club. What if... He won't hurt them, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. They're his children, and there's no financial benefit to harming them. Financial benefit? Her voice rose. You're talking about financial benefit? This is insane. Keep your voice down, I warned. Rachel, I need your help. Kyle can't know that I've told you. Can you pretend everything is normal? She took a shaky breath. I don't know if I can look at him without. You have to. For the kids. For me. Can you do that? After a long moment, she nodded. For the next 2 days, I played a careful game. I avoided Kyle as much as possible, but couldn't disappear completely without making him suspicious. I attended family dinners, smiled through his concerned questions about my health, and palmed every pill he tried to give me. At night, I flushed them down the toilet. Rachel was magnificent. She played the dutiful wife perfectly, laughing at Kyle's jokes, herding the grandkids to activities, acting like nothing was wrong. But I caught her watching him sometimes, with an expression that could strip paint. On the morning of the 3rd day, as we approached Grand Cayman, I finally confronted him. I'd arranged it carefully. Asked him to meet me on the aft deck at dawn. Told him I wanted to talk about the company, about his future. Rachel had the kids in the breakfast buffet, well away from us, and I'd called ship security, asked them to be nearby but not visible, just in case. Kyle arrived exactly on time, wearing expensive resort casual clothes that I'd probably paid for. He hugged me, and I felt nothing. No warmth, no connection, just the mechanical embrace of a predator. Dad, I'm glad you wanted to talk. I've been worried about you. Have you? Something in my tone made him step back slightly. Of course. You've been acting strange. Avoiding me. I thought maybe the cruise was too much, too soon, after Mom's death. Your mother's been dead for 4 years, Kyle. I know, but grief has no timeline. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. I know about Veronica. I know about the forged will. I know about the medications. His face went blank, completely expressionless. It was like watching a mask drop. Dad, I don't know what you think you heard. I heard you planning my murder. On deck 9, outside your suite, 2 nights ago, you were on the phone with your mistress, discussing how my heart attack would look natural. I pulled out my phone, holding it up, and I've recorded every interaction we've had since then. Every pill you've tried to give me. Every concerned question. All of it. You're recording me? His voice was flat now, all pretense of affection gone. I'm protecting myself. From my own son, my only son. My voice broke despite my efforts. Why, Kyle? The company was always going to be yours eventually. Why couldn't you wait? Eventually? He laughed, a harsh sound. You're 67, Dad. You could live another 20 years. Do you know what Veronica and I could do with Brennan Construction right now? The deals we could make? But no. You had to hold on with both hands, treating me like I'm still a kid who doesn't understand the business. You're right. You don't understand the business. You understand spreadsheets and shortcuts, and taking what you didn't earn. I've earned it. He stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. 20 years working under you, listening to your lectures, following your rules. Well, I'm done. The company should be mine now, not when you finally decide to retire or die of natural causes. So you decided to speed up the natural causes. It would have been painless. A heart attack in your sleep. The perfect end for Thomas Brennan, who worked himself to death. His smile was cruel. Very poetic, really. It's also murder. Only if someone can prove it. And who would? Not Dr. Peters. He's just following the prescription he thinks he wrote. Not the medical examiner, who'd see a man with high blood pressure and a family history of heart disease. Nobody would question it. I would. We both turned. Gerald Morrison stood in the doorway, leading to the interior deck, his phone held up and recording. Next to him were 2 ship security officers and, to my surprise, a man in a Grand Cayman police uniform. Kyle's face went white. Who are you people? Detective Marcus Rodriguez, Grand Cayman Police. We received a very interesting call from Mr. Morrison here about an attempted murder conspiracy, and Mr. Brennan Sr. has been kind enough to provide us with considerable evidence. I'd planned this moment carefully with Gerald over the past 2 days. The ship's internet was spotty, but we'd managed to communicate through a series of calls and encrypted emails. Gerald had contacted Cayman authorities, who'd sent Detective Rodriguez to board the ship early this morning with the harbor pilot. Kyle looked at me, and for a moment I saw fear in his eyes. Then it hardened into something else. Hatred. You set me up. No, son, you set yourself up. I just documented it. They arrested him right there on the deck. Kyle didn't struggle, but he didn't stop talking either. He ranted about how the company was rightfully his, how I'd stolen his future, how everything would have been fine if I'd just died on schedule. Rachel appeared with the kids just as they were taking him away. She kept Max and Sophie back, but I heard her crying. Not for Kyle, for the life she'd thought she had, that had just shattered like that champagne bottle against my cabin wall. The investigation took 6 months. They found everything. The forged will, created with Veronica's help since she had access to office systems. The altered prescription, which Kyle had changed using Dr. Peters' compromised patient portal. The financial records showing Kyle had been embezzling from the company for 2 years, trying to build up a nest egg for his new life. He went to trial in Grand Cayman since the attempt occurred in their waters. Veronica testified against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. She painted a picture of a man consumed by entitlement and greed who saw his father's continued existence as an obstacle to his happiness. Kyle got 18 years. Veronica got 8. Dr. Peters faced medical board review but was cleared of wrongdoing since his systems had been hacked. Rachel divorced him. I made sure she and the kids were taken care of. They didn't choose any of this. The hardest part wasn't the trial or the publicity or even the betrayal. It was going back to work every day, sitting in the office where Kyle used to work across from me, and knowing that my own blood had looked at me and seen nothing but a number on a balance sheet. I sold Brennan Construction 6 months after the trial. $50 million, gone to a competitor who'd been circling for years. I kept enough to live comfortably and set up trust funds for Max and Sophie, so they'd never need anything. The rest I donated to programs for at-risk youth, kids who needed a chance to build something honest. People asked me why I didn't keep it, why I let everything I'd built just vanish. But they didn't understand. That company was tainted now. Every time I walked through those doors, I saw Kyle. I heard his voice in my cabin. The old man will have a heart attack. I'm 70 now, living in a small house in Oregon, far from Seattle and the memories. Rachel brings the kids to visit sometimes. Max is 15 now, talking about architecture school. Sophie is 13, already showing interest in engineering. Smart kids, good kids. They ask about their father sometimes. I tell them the truth, but gently. That people make terrible choices. That loving someone doesn't mean excusing what they've done. That family is supposed to be a foundation, not a trap. I don't talk to Kyle. He's written letters from prison, apologizing, explaining, justifying. I've never opened them. Gerald handles all the legal correspondence. Some people think I'm heartless for cutting him off completely. But here's what I learned on that cruise ship. Hiding in bathrooms and libraries, running from my own son. You can forgive betrayal, maybe, eventually, but you never forget what someone became when they thought you weren't watching. I have good days and bad days. Good days. I remember Kyle as a little boy, bringing me coffee in the workshop, wearing my hard hat that was too big for his head. Bad days. I remember the blankness in his eyes when the mask finally dropped, when he stopped pretending to be human and let me see the predator underneath. But I'm still here, still alive, still breathing. And sometimes, on the very best days, that feels like enough. Not because I won, or he lost, or justice was served, but because I refused to be the victim in someone else's story. I refused to die on schedule. I refused to go quietly into that good night just because it would have been convenient for my son's bank account. That cruise was supposed to be a family vacation, a chance to reconnect. Instead, it became the place where I learned the most painful lesson of my life, that the people who hurt us worst are the ones we trust most, because only they have access to our blind spots. But here's the thing about blind spots. Once you know they're there, they're not blind anymore. I keep the ship's itinerary on my refrigerator, held up by a magnet shaped like a life preserver. A reminder, not of what Kyle did, but of what I survived. The detective asked me once if I ever regretted not going straight to the captain that first night. If I wondered whether confronting Kyle was worth the risk, whether I should have just disappeared until we docked. I told him no, because running would have meant staying a victim. Confronting him, recording him, building a case, that meant taking control. Gerald still handles my legal affairs. He jokes that I gave him the most interesting case of his career. I joke that I'm glad someone got something good out of it. But late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about that moment on the aft deck, when Kyle's mask dropped and he looked at me with nothing but cold calculation. When my son became a stranger, and I think about the question he asked. Why couldn't you wait? The answer is simple, Kyle. Because some things are worth more than money, more than companies, more than convenience. Like your life, like your integrity, like knowing you can look at yourself in the mirror. I look in the mirror now and see a survivor, an old man who refused to die on someone else's schedule, a father who loved his son but wouldn't let that love become permission to kill him. It's not the ending I wanted. When Margaret and I had Kyle, when we brought him home from the hospital, and I promised to protect him and teach him and help him build a good life, I never imagined it would end like this. With him in prison and me alone in Oregon, both of us living with the choices we made. But it's the ending I've got, and I'm still here to see it. That's not nothing. That's everything.